The morning after my husband's funeral, my son asked if I had thought about selling the house. I hadn't even taken off my black dress. By lunchtime, my daughter suggested I move into her garage, just until things settle. At first, I thought they were just trying to help. But as the days went on, the masks slipped. They weren't offering support, they were circling like vultures. My name was still on the deed, but I could feel them measuring curtains already. What they didn't know: my late husband had a secret, and I was about to use it. I didn't say much at first. Grief has a strange way of making you quiet, like the world is underwater and everyone else is speaking through glass. I nodded politely, smiled when I needed to, and said I'd think about it. But inside, something began to stir. A discomfort, a knowing. Paul and I raised our children in this house. Every inch of it held pieces of us. His old easel still leaned against the sunroom wall, and the creaky step on the staircase still sang the same old tune when you stepped on it, the same way it did when the kids used to sneak in after curfew. And yet, barely a day after laying him to rest, my children were circling me like vultures around a fading carcass. Patrick came over the next day with spreadsheets. Printed spreadsheets. "It's a seller's market, Mom," he said, tapping the paper like it was gospel. "If you wait too long, interest rates could shift and you'll lose thousands." Erin called that night with fake concern in her voice. "You're not sleeping well in that big place, are you, Mom? I mean, it must feel so empty. I just hate thinking of you being alone in all that space." Then she casually mentioned how she and her husband had been thinking of moving too. If they sold both houses, maybe they could all start fresh somewhere new. A shared property. Multi-generational, like those trending videos she watches. They spoke like I was furniture, an old dresser that needed to be repurposed or recycled. But here's what they didn't know: I wasn't some frail widow they could herd around. I wasn't confused. And I wasn't going to hand over the only place that still smelled like Paul's cologne just because they thought I was too weak to fight back. There's a difference between being alone and being abandoned. They had left me long before Paul died, too busy, too distant, too focused on careers and image and money. Now they were back, not out of love, but out of calculation. I started listening more carefully, watching what they didn't say. Patrick always used words like assets and liquidity when he talked to me now. Erin spoke in false comforts, overly sweet, but with timelines and suggestions that made my skin crawl. And one night, as I sat on the porch with a glass of wine and Paul's favorite cardigan draped over my shoulders, I realized something crystal clear. If they wanted a game, they picked the wrong opponent. Because the house wasn't just mine, it was the battlefield. And I was just getting started. I sat there frozen, clutching the letter like it was a lifeline thrown from across time. Paul's handwriting was shaky but familiar, each loop of ink soaked in love and quiet foresight. He had seen this coming, perhaps not exactly, but enough to plan for the day our children might see me not as their mother, but as a transaction. The letter was short, but powerful. If you're reading this, it means you're standing at a crossroads. I know our kids, Margaret. I hoped they'd grow into people who valued you, not what you represent. But I prepared for the worst. There's a house waiting for you in Spain. It's quiet, full of sun, and yours alone. I kept it secret, not to deceive you, but to protect you. There's a separate fund in your name. Use it if you need to. Don't let anyone box you in. You gave your life to this family. Now it's your turn. Tears fell, but not from sorrow. It was validation. He saw me. He knew me. And he had given me something neither of our children had ever offered: a choice. I opened the small wooden box that had been tucked inside the desk drawer for years, the one I used to think was just a keepsake container. Under old photos and mementos was a lockbox key and a bank routing number scrawled in Paul's shorthand. I went to the bank that afternoon. Alone. The trust was real. So was the money. So was the deed, tucked away in a legal folder, notarized in Spain and dated nearly 6 years ago. Paul had made arrangements with a property manager named Javier, whose name and number were written on a post-it note attached to the folder. I called. He answered in English with a warm voice and confirmed everything. The villa was in good shape, had been rented out occasionally, and was ready whenever I was. I didn't speak for a few seconds, just held the phone to my ear while 1,000 thoughts swirled. The house, the money, the plan, it wasn't just an escape route. It was a second life, waiting on the other side of the ocean. And for the first time in weeks, maybe years, I felt something settle in my chest. Not peace exactly, but power. The kind of quiet strength that builds behind your ribs when you realize you've been underestimated. But I couldn't just leave. Not yet. They wanted this house? Let them keep circling. Let them keep scheming. Because I was going to give them a parting gift they'd never forget. And when I walked away, it wouldn't be with my head down. It would be with the wind at my back and their stunned silence behind me. Let the game begin. The first rule of any good revenge is patience. Not rage. Not confrontation. Patience. You give people enough rope, and they'll tie the noose themselves. So, I became someone they'd underestimate. I played the sweet, confused widow. I acted like Aaron's condo brochures were so helpful, and that Patrick's offer to streamline the paperwork was such a relief. I nodded when they said things like, "You shouldn't have to deal with this stuff right now, Mom," and "We'll take care of everything." They thought they were pulling the strings. But what they didn't realize is, I had already cut them. I met with Paul's lawyer the next day. The man was sharp, discreet, and clearly fond of my husband. He smiled as he handed me a folder and said, "Mr. Holloway thought of everything." Turns out, the house had been transferred into a shell holding company Paul set up years ago. It was sitting in the name of a private trust, with me as the sole beneficiary, and more importantly, with an ironclad clause: the property could never be sold without my written consent. Ever. I signed the final transfer, quietly removing my own name from public record. Legally, the house no longer belonged to Margaret Holloway. But it also didn't belong to Patrick or Aaron. It belonged to something they couldn't touch, couldn't access, and didn't even know existed. Then I started moving other things. My checking, my savings, even the joint account Paul and I once shared. I opened new ones under a different bank. Transferred utilities. Forwarded mail to a P.O. box. Every little piece of my life, slowly detached from their reach. All while baking banana bread and asking Aaron about school plays. All while pretending not to understand Patrick's market jargon. All while smiling. They thought they were closing in on the prize. But I was slipping out the back door. And still, I wasn't done. I contacted Javier, the property manager in Valencia. Told him I'd be arriving in a month. He arranged everything: cleaning, groceries, fresh linens, even a driver to pick me up from the airport. I wired a small amount of the trust money to him as a down payment. And then I waited. The next weekend, Patrick came by with a real estate agent in tow. "Just to get a feel for what's possible," he said. I played along. Nodded at the kitchen. Frowned thoughtfully in the living room. Asked if I could still visit once it's sold. He laughed, patted my shoulder, and said, "Of course, Mom. You'll always be welcome." That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and looked out at the garden Paul planted for me all those years ago. It was overgrown now, a little wild, but still standing. Just like me. They were circling. Greedy. Certain. Oblivious. And the trap was already shut. All I had to do was spring it. When Patrick rang the doorbell that morning, he had a pep in his step. Behind him stood a couple in designer coats, holding lattes and house brochures. He gave me that condescending smile he perfected since college, the one that said, "Don't worry, Mom, I've got this." "This is the Johnsons," he said, stepping aside. "They're looking for a long-term investment. Just want a quick tour. I didn't even open the storm door. Patrick, I said calmly, you're going to want to read this. I slid an envelope through the crack. His brows furrowed as he opened it, then twisted as he scanned the pages inside. Deed records. Trust structure. Paul's clause. My signature. This isn't real, he stammered. Oh, it's very real, I said. And as of 2 weeks ago, you no longer have any say over this house. Neither do I, technically. He blinked. What does that mean? It means you brought buyers to a house you don't own, Patrick. You might want to cancel the open house. His face flushed. His hand twitched like he didn't know whether to crumple the papers or hand them back. He didn't do either. He stormed off without another word. 2 hours later, Erin came barreling in without knocking. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, her voice already raised. What the hell did you do? I was ready. I reached under the hall table and handed her a second envelope, this one addressed to both of them. She snatched it, tore it open, and started reading. Her lips moved silently through the first few lines. Then her eyes darted up to me. You're leaving. I am, I said simply. You're just going to run away? No, I said. I'm going to start over. There's a difference. She shook her head, laughing bitterly. After everything we've done for you. You mean the basement offer? The fake concern? The open house behind my back? Erin's voice cracked. You're our mother. And you are my children, I said. But that doesn't give you the right to sell my grief, or the walls that held your childhood. She stood there, clutching the letter like it was a threat instead of a goodbye. What are we supposed to tell people? Tell them the truth, I said. That your mother got tired of being the last one considered. They left in a huff, twin storms of ego and entitlement. I stood at the window and watched their cars pull out of the driveway. And then I smiled. That night, I left something behind. A moving truck delivered an old upright piano to Erin's doorstep. No note, just the instrument she used to play every Saturday morning as a girl, before life and greed rewired her melody. She once called it clutter, said it didn't match her modern aesthetic. Now it was hers again. A reminder of what used to be, and what would never be again. Meanwhile, I packed the last of my bags, and locked the door behind me, for the very last time. Spain embraced me like an old friend I never knew I needed. The air was sweet with oranges from the neighboring grove, and the early mornings were soft. No voices, no demands, no accusations. Just birdsong, a sun that took its time, and the slow rhythm of life lived for no one but myself. The villa was smaller than the home I had left, but every tile, every breeze through the open window felt like mine. Not borrowed, not obligated, not weighed down by memories I was expected to carry for others. I started painting again. Small canvases at first. Colors I hadn't touched in decades. My hand shook the first time, not from age, but from the thrill of choosing something just for me. And then, one morning, my phone buzzed. It was Lily, my granddaughter, Patrick's daughter. We hadn't spoken in months, not since the funeral. Her voice trembled through the line. Grandma, I found the letter you left in my sketchbook, the one with the sunflower drawing you used to help me with. Dad said you left us, abandoned us, but that's not what it sounded like. I held my breath. I want to know your side. Can I come visit you? I nearly dropped the phone. 1 month later, she arrived at the little airport near Valencia. Taller now, older than the last time I held her, but still Lily, the same girl who once asked me how to draw tears that looked real. She ran to me and hugged me like someone waking up from a bad dream. That evening, we sat under the terrace lights and talked. 4 hours. About Paul. About her parents. About grief and guilt and how family can twist both until you're too dizzy to see straight. I showed her the trust papers, the photos from my old life. I told her the truth, not to turn her against anyone, but because someone at some point had to choose honesty over appearance. She listened. Not once did she interrupt. When I finished, she wiped her eyes and said softly, "I knew something wasn't right. You always saw me, Grandma. I want to see you now." In the weeks that followed, Lily stayed with me. We cooked paella with the neighbor. She helped me stretch canvases. She painted a sunflower for the guest room. I laughed again, not politely or cautiously, but freely. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not as someone's widow. Not as someone's mother. Just as me. And you know what the most beautiful part was? I didn't need revenge to find peace. I just needed space. And someone who remembered who I truly was. Family can hurt you. But sometimes, if you're lucky, it can also heal you. One voice at a time. Sometimes, the deepest scars are the ones hidden behind family portraits and holiday dinners. Betrayal doesn't always come with shouting. It can whisper through guilt trips and masked concern. But healing begins the moment you choose yourself over their expectations. You are not selfish for walking away from people who only love you when you're useful. You are not cruel for choosing peace over performance. Like Margaret, you deserve a life that honors who you truly are. Have you ever had to stand up to someone you once trusted? Tell us in the comments. We see you. And if this story moved you, hit subscribe. Because here, we tell the stories that others keep quiet. Stories of quiet rebellion, of earned freedom, and of redemption that comes not in rage, but in release.